Do you remember your awkward 12-year-old phase? Please tell me you remember that, and that's just not me. But have you noticed that today's preteens don't seem to go through that classic awkward phase anymore? I'm talking about the phase where you were just barely trying to be independent, trying to be edgy. Maybe you wanted to look a little bit more mature, but you were still a kid deep down. And it seems like these younger Gen Alpha preteens have sort of lost that, which is what I want to talk about today: the disappearance of preteen culture. The preteen years are typically a transitional phase from ages about 9 to 12, which is a time when kids are no longer like very young little children, but they're not yet teenagers. For many of us, this was a very awkward phase of experimenting with a lot of cringy attempts to act like the older teens and still figuring out our personal styles and interests, hobbies, etc. However, among Gen Alpha, this awkward phase seems to be disappearing, which is something that we've all noticed. I think we've seen those Sephora kids, like young 9-year-olds that are going into Sephora and buying like Drunk Elephant, like skincare, stuff like that. It's normal for younger kids to look up to cool teens. I remember trying to imitate millennials' neon t-shirts and those mustache stickers in 2010, even if now millennials are like the cringy old like losers that everybody makes fun of. Back then, I remember they were the cool ones, and I can remember when I was like 12 or something, coloring my lips with like a red Sharpie so I would appear more like that one pic of Selena Gomez, because I didn't have access to an actual lipstick, but I still wanted to seem older, cooler, and more mature in general. But unlike us, who often failed hilariously in trying to look older, Gen Alpha preteens are not just trying to attempt to imitate Gen Z teenagers, they're actually succeeding in imitating the style and the mannerism of their teenage counterparts. They have access to the same media, the same fashion, and even like the beauty routines and makeup as Gen Z does. And this is something that I've noticed, that often this awkward stage is disappearing. So why is this happening? I believe it is due to the loss of preteen culture, and that is what I want to talk about. First of all, we have the loss of preteen TV shows. Do you remember when Disney Channel and Cartoon Network dominated childhood? I'm talking about shows like Hannah Montana, Jessie, The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, even like Nick Teen, and obviously Wizards of Waverly Palace. These were staples for a lot of preteens, including myself. I remember Jessie was the shit. I remember it all so vividly, and they were filled with like laughs and just relatable preteen stuff. They weren't too heavy with the topics. They were still kept it light, but they weren't treating you like a baby. They still had like some sarcasm and whatnot. What I've noticed is you are much less likely to find kids watching these kinds of shows today. Instead, even like the younger preteens, like 11 and 12, they are turning to more mature content. I'm talking about shows that were geared towards like teens and young adults, like Euphoria, Stranger Things, Outer Banks, you name it. What is behind this shift? It's clear that kids today have different viewing habits, and the reasons are a little bit complex. For one, streaming services. Streaming services have opened up a world of content that used to be previously unavailable to younger viewers, and the boundaries between kids and teen shows have been blurred. The accessibility of mature content has changed, and what kids find exciting and what networks think they want has also changed. According to recent data, kids-centered networks like Disney Channel and Cartoon Network have seen significant drops in viewership, with more kids moving to platforms like Netflix and Hulu for their entertainment. In fact, Cartoon Network actually has completely shut down its website, moving more towards HBO Max instead. There are a few key reasons for the decline in traditional preteen shows. First, there's the changing landscape of media consumption. Preteens today are digital natives, and what I mean by that is they're not turning towards cable or more websites like we used to do in the days of like the early internet, or even before the internet. I was more early internet, but they're turning more towards social media. And if all they're seeing is older teenagers on social media talking about, like, I remember Stranger Things season 4 was big, I remember the Jeffrey Dahmer documentary was big. If they're seeing that, and it's natural for kids to want to imitate and be more cooler, more older, more mature, they're gonna want to watch those. They're not gonna want to watch like Jessie or some Hannah Montana or something like that. Also, there's a broader cultural shift. As young people are increasingly exposed to like more political and social issues and just more complex life things, their tastes are going to mature faster if they're being exposed to more mature content. It's much more likely that they're going to see something like Hannah Montana as being babyish, even if they're only like 12. Shows designed for preteens are just not going to capture their interest in the same way anymore if they're on social media and they're seeing stuff about like the Israel and Palestine conflict. Next is the loss of preteen clothing stores and styles. Do you remember, and maybe this is just me, walking into like a Claire's or a Justice store as like an 11-year-old? Everything was very bright, very fun, and just unapologetically youthful. Sparkly accessories, colorful like graphic t-shirts, charm bracelets, and like everything that a preteen girl would dream of, essentially. Justice was like the Gucci equivalent for every 11-year-old girl. Like if you were walking up there with like those little Justice boots and you had like the Justin Bieber backpack, you were the shit in elementary school 2013. Like you were that bitch. And in recent years, I have found that stores like Justice and Claire's, stores catered specifically towards younger girls, they're just slowly disappearing. Today, these stores are becoming much harder to find, and they're replaced with a different, more mature kind of fashion. In recent years, stores like Justice has either closed down or shifted their strategy, while Claire's is in rapid decline. I'm pretty sure they're going to go out of business, mark my words, in the next 5 years. Meanwhile, preteens are moving away from these colorful styles to more mature fashion trends, styles that would feel more like what a teenager or maybe a young adult would wear. Justice and Claire's were more than just stores. They were destinations for girls to express their unique style and just this youthful nature. Justice in particular saw a peak in the early 2000s, catering towards young girls with bright colors, very, very bright pink, lots of glitter, and like these empowering slogans like peace, love, and whatnot. You all know. However, as fashion has shifted throughout the years, these brands have begun to struggle. The decline of malls combined with changing style preferences made it much harder for these stores to thrive. So what is causing this change in fashion taste? The primary factor is, you guessed it, drumroll, social media. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube expose preteens to older influencers and trends, shaping their taste for a more grown-up look. And I'm not just saying this to like bash on younger generations. I'm not just saying this to be like, oh, kids these days. I get it, it's normal to want to be older. I'm just saying that the internet has made it much more accessible, much more easier to be older. Which I don't know if necessarily is healthy. Instead of neon colors and hearts, we see preteens leaning more towards minimalistic, muted, neutral tones and crop tops, and styles that really echo teenage fashion. Another factor is the broader availability of more mature fashion. Retailers like H&M, Zara, and even Target now I've seen carrying trendy, more teen-inspired items of clothing that appeal to younger girls with sizing and style that is for younger girls, that kind of bridge the gap between children and adult clothing. There's also the loss of preteen celebrities. What I mean by preteen celebrities is, I'm not saying these celebrities are preteen, but I'm saying these are celebrities that cater to preteen audiences. I remember there was a time when we all had these stars that we would look up to. I'm talking about young Justin Bieber, One Direction, the Jonas Brothers. These were people that would create a world that was very fun and exciting and relatable. And they talked about things that were relatable for preteens in their songs, like having a crush or whatnot. These celebrities captured an era of preteen fandom that was crafting music and shows that were not only catchy, but also with subjects that were, I guess, appropriate for a younger audience. And today, it seems like they don't have as many options for stars to look up to that cater specifically towards preteens. I find more often now that when I ask like kids in middle or elementary school what their favorite artists are, they respond with artists like Travis Scott, Playboi Carti, and Drake. While these artists do not necessarily make bad music, like I like some of their songs, the subjects that are often like prevalent in their songs are a bit mature for like a 9 or 10-year-old to be exposed to. And it doesn't help that when a company that tries to make these songs more child appropriate, like Kids Bop, is always mocked and ridiculed as cringy, even if there is some truth to those accusations. It does help kind of reinforce the idea that we should be moving away towards more child-centered stuff and focusing on more adult media. And finally, we have the loss of preteen magazines. In the past, I'm talking in the way back, in the ancient times, in the 2000s, teen magazines like 17, Teen Vogue, J14, and Tiger Beat filled the shelves, offering a place for preteens and whatnot to really dive into celebrity news, fashion tips, advice columns, and posters of their favorite stars. These magazines weren't just reading material, they were a cultural staple, shaping the identities of young readers throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. Now, these iconic magazines are becoming much harder and harder to find. Today's teens are more likely to get their news, inspiration, and entertainment from social media or YouTube. As social media rose, the way young people consumed content changed drastically. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube began to take over, and I guess this is an inevitable product byproduct of the internet age is print media is slowly dying, and with that, these magazines that were catered towards preteens have also died along with it. So why is the disappearance of preteen culture happening? Believe it or not, I'm not just making these videos to shit on the younger generations, but rather to take a deeper look as to why this change is happening. First, there's social media and streaming platforms exposing preteens to much broader and a mature array of content than previous generations had access to. TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube in particular connect younger audiences with teen and adult influencers, effectively fast-tracking their preferences towards more mature trends, music, and entertainment. Second, the decline in preteen targeted media from TV shows to magazines means fewer sources are dedicated to celebrating that phase of life. This shift from child-focused networks like Disney Channel to platforms like Netflix or Hulu means that preteens are watching content originally aimed at older teens or young adults, which influences our interest and taste in ways that we didn't experience as preteens ourselves. Lastly, retailers and brands have begun to adapt to these new mature tastes by offering fashion, beauty, and lifestyle products that appeal to a more sophisticated look, leaving brands like Justice and Claire struggling to maintain relevance. As a result, today's preteens aren't going through that quirky, awkward phase because they're more aware of and are influenced by the polished, curated adult world at a much younger age.